Now, I had mentioned the representational systems, our sensory processing channels that comes from the field of study called neuro-linguistic programming, or NLP. Another important concept that we get from this field of communication and therapy, NLP, is that of reframing. And reframing means to put a different spin, a different meaning around what happened. We don't always know the meaning of what happened. Things happen, but how do we assign meaning to them? Uh, can we rewrite a piece of our history? Can we decide that we don't know exactly what it meant? There's a very famous teaching story about a farmer in Russia who had one son, and his son did all of his chores for him. And one day, a horse wandered down from the mountains and into his yard, and the farmer closed the paddock. And people said, "Oh, you're so fortunate. No one in our village has a horse. You are so lucky." And the farmer looked at them and he said, it may be a blessing and it may be a curse. Only time will tell. And they didn't know what he meant. And after some time of feeding and caring for this horse, the stallion escaped, jumped the fence, and ran off back to the mountains. And everyone in the village said, "Oh, what a shame. You had this beautiful horse and it got away." And the farmer said, "Well, it may be a blessing and it may be a curse. Only time will tell." And the people scratched their head and said, "Well, I don't get it." And in the springtime, after the winter, the stallion returned from the mountains with a mare and a foal, coming back to the farmer who had fed him and cared for him. And they wandered back into the farmer's yard, and the farmer swung the gate shut, and everyone in the village said, "Oh, you're unbelievably lucky. Look at you. You have 3 horses now." And the farmer said, "Well, it may be a blessing and it may be a curse. Only time will tell." People were, again, very puzzled. And the farmer's son decided one day that he was going to tame the stallion. And so he waited until the stallion, he was sitting on the fence, waited for the stallion to go by, and jumped on the stallion's back. And the stallion raced off bucking, and he was trying to hold on for dear life. And he said, "I'm going to break this stallion." The stallion stopped suddenly, and the teenage boy shot over his head and fell and broke both legs. And all the people in the village said, "Oh my goodness, what a terrible tragedy. Look at your son is the only one who does all of your farming chores and tasks, and what are you going to do now? He's in a cast, both legs broken, a terrible misfortune." And the farmer said, "Well, it may be a blessing, it may be a curse. Only time will tell." And at this point, even his wife said, "Old man, you're crazy. I don't understand you." But the farmer understood that we don't know. Eventually, we may think something is good, but eventually it turns out to be not so good, and vice versa. The opposite is true also. At that point, the Tsar declared war, and the sergeant came around with his men to conscription for draft all the eligible young men. Every young man of fighting age in the village was taken off to fight in the war, except, of course, for the farmer's son, because he was ineligible, being in a caste. And all the people in the village said, "Oh my God, you are so lucky. Look at that. Your son was spared." And the farmer said, "You still don't get it, do you? It may be a blessing and it may be a curse. Only time will tell." So there is value in anecdotes, in myths, legends, stories that we tell and that we hold on to, because they parallel and they can teach us how to make better choices and decisions in our interpretation of the meaning of things in our lives.